All right. All right. Where am I at? Where am I at? Where am I at? Oh, here we go. I don't know why this is up there. See, I knew I needed to check this before. Okay. All right. All right. Just trying to make sure. Oh, people. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I want to welcome everybody. We're making sure we have everything okay and everything is going good. I want to welcome everybody to Black Law Enforcement Unplugged. This is our third interview, and this morning I got my brother here, Jonathan Newton, who is an activist, who is a attorney at law. Um, as I said, he's an activist. I'm going to go back to that because that's key in the need in our community. He's an author. We're going to get into that.
That's right.
We're going to get into that, and we're going to talk about this morning the issues in activism, in the criminal justice system, in the legal system, from in law enforcement, from activist mindset, and where we are, where our positives and our negatives. Because in 2020 we have to have 2020 vision. We are kind of tired of the same old, and we're getting and we're getting nowhere. So welcome, brother.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. For those that are watching the show, introduce yourself and give a little background so people can understand who you are. Can you hear me? Did I lose you?
Me?
Yes, sir. You, brother.
Oh, Dave, I appreciate you having me. First off, um, you and I go back to I think about 2014 when I started the National Association Against Police Brutality. Um, a common friend of mine in the D.C. area, Ron Hampton, who was a former Metropolitan Police Department police officer, and I'm thrilled to be here. I'm glad that you're doing this to have these types of conversations about the criminal justice system, about criminal justice reform, and about the things that we all, as active participants in our community, can do to make the situation better. I'm glad to be a part of that dialogue and that conversation. Um, as you know, and I used to be a former police officer myself. I was. I blew the whistle on a sitting sheriff down in Georgia, and the blowback was that he accused me of some crimes. I was arrested under an indictment. I sat out on bail for 26 months before the charges were dropped, and then I was offered my job back, and I decided to go to law school instead. And so, sort of my journey has been one of experiencing the criminal justice system from both sides. The other part is that I am a son of a twice convicted felon. Um, so I grew up in a house with you know understanding what it's like to have a family member incarcerated, come home and then be reincarcerated. I understand the impact that it has on our communities. I understand the impact that overly punitive laws have on our communities. Um, And so for me, this is not sort of like it was. Law school was not just an academic affair. It was very personal, and so that's. I'm glad you've invited me. I'm glad to be here, and let's talk.
Well, so let's, brother. You mentioned some things that you were a former law enforcement officer, and you blew the whistle,
Yeah.
right? You broke the blue wall of silence, and they came at you. Now, with your experience in that and what you have seen, I don't know if you saw the interview that I did with uh, Caroline Horn, the Buffalo cop, that she stopped the officer from choking a black man. She's a black woman, black female officer. She stopped a white cop from choking a black man in handcuffs, and the cop assaulted her. And then she ended up losing her job. Um, Stories like yours and stories like Caroline's. Did you get the support of the local people, the NAACP, when you were going through? What was your experience? Because they always want black cops to speak out, right? And then when we do speak out, we don't get the support of the activist community and a lot of the organizations, civil rights organizations.
I have to say for me where I was at, I did get the support. Um, Even though the support was, I got the support.
Okay.
The organization itself at the local level, it's like sort of the NAACP everywhere. It's not reforming, but it was it. While I was going through that situation, you'd be like, wow, they could do more, but everybody can always do more.
Right.
The NAACP president at the end, when I processed all the way through that, I was awarded uh, 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 an award from the NAACP. And it was kind of funny. The same night I'm getting the award, the person that I blew the whistle on was getting an award as well. So, you know, um, I have my award and I keep it proudly. But they did offer their support. It always can be more, and I think that a lot of people don't understand when somebody decides to either blow the whistle or even challenge these systems. That if they do that individually without the backing of large groups, it's going to be an uphill challenge.
Yeah, definitely. Do you see the need from a legal perspective, that you're a lawyer and a former police and an actor? Do you see the need of lawyers um, being more, because I see a lot of cases. I see a lot of cases, and I'm not gonna say I say police criminality cases that lawyers go for the money, and I got distracted with other stuff today, but there was this was high powered black lawyer, younger brother, and he had made a tweet. He later took it down, that it's about the money. Basically, we get what we could get, and he ended up taking it down because a lot of people um a lot of people was beating him up on it. It should be about justice. It should be about getting justice for the victims that you represent. Not about the money. What's your opinion on that? Now you went through law school. You have dealt with different law firms and from an activist standpoint, and now a attorney standpoint.
The first thing when somebody walks in my office, they fill out a form that tells me what their goals are and what would be a result that they want to receive. If they wave a magical wand and this could be this situation, whatever it is, can end the way that they would like to have it end, what would it be? Because when we talk about justice, what type of justice are you talking about? Social justice, economic justice, environmental justice. Justice means different things to different people. And so when you're talking about these police misconduct cases, primarily what you're talking about is somebody has lost either life or limb, or they've been severely beaten, or something to that effect has happened. And so, um, you know, we need more lawyers in this space. I will say that, but it is there's a balance, because every case comes with its own set of complexities, and every case is not necessarily a case that is one that you may want to seek monetary damages uh,
Right.
as the result. However, almost every single case of police misconduct has some value, whether it be social justice and actually putting the information out there so that other people can see, hey, this particular officer did this set of actions, and there may be other victims that are out there.
Right. Right.
It has that kind of value. And so I think that lawyers need to be trained into identifying other value besides monetary value. You're trained at law school just to really look at the law, but when you come out here and you start practicing, you have to begin to run a business. And at the end of the day, what you're looking at is it economically feasible to invest your time and your resources into something that's not going to yield any money. And so you have this dichotomy between being a lawyer, businessman, and a social justice activist.
Right.
And so some people cannot do that. And so they say, okay, I'm going to be a businessman. I'm going to make the money. And, it's about the money. It's about the money. I direct my people to take a look at, what are you really trying to get here? And if you say, because a lot of people will say, well, this is not about the money to me, and yet all the decisions that they make in regards to the case end up being about money. And
Right.
so if I love the form that I have, because I take them back to that form. Like, listen, remember you said that this is what we were going to be talking about, because when we get off focus as to what our goals were, and it's easy to do, because we're dealing in reality of life, and you find people that are, everybody out here is suffering economically. Most of the people that I know are suffering economically, and so they're looking for ways to better themselves. What's troubling to me and disconcerting to me is when I see lawyers exploit these situations. Lawyers, and sometimes even activists, exploit these situations. They become opportunistic, and they try to make these situations either a way to platform themselves and give themselves more notoriety, which will lead to more cases, and that sort of thing. And so I have learned there's a difference between a celebrity lawyer and a trial lawyer.
Right.
And oftentimes, you need two of them instead of just one of them.
Right.
You need a celebrity lawyer to bring in attention, while you need a trial lawyer to actually go ahead and litigate the case.
All right. Great. 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 Now you've seen all these high-powered lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from in your opinion, with what you see with the cases, are we making a dent legally in dealing with police brutality in the Black community, and police accountability?
Well, I will say that we are starting to see officers being charged and some officers being convicted. So we have made some progress, and of course we can always better our best. But when we look at where we started and where we're at now, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that we could do better. But I am happy to say that we have made progress. The Kwame Donald killing, you saw an officer go to jail. Down in South Carolina, you saw officer go to jail. You're seeing this more often now than was in the 60s and the 70s. In the 80s and the 90s. So you're starting to see that. And I think that's because we have different tools and resources at our ability now. We have the internet to bring attention to these cases. Whereas before, what happens in a courthouse just happens in the courthouse, and nobody finds out about it unless the news chooses to run the story. And so, now with more resources, there's more pressure on the criminal justice system to deliver equal justice to Black and brown victims. I will say this, with regards to how we can do better. I think that some of the lawyers that I see that are high power, some of them may have subconsciously adopted a purely capitalistic mindset, and adopted that, as opposed to really looking at systems change and how to go about it. At the end of the day, if we're talking about creating change in the criminal justice system, we need to talk about changing some of the personnel that has some of the mindsets that they do, and that is a political process. And so, if you win a $10 million judgment after you've earned the money and it now personally becomes yours, what are you doing with it? Are you buying, Gulfstream jets and bigger houses, or are you looking to back candidates in areas that have progressive mindsets to be able to change out some of the prosecutors? With some of the money that's been generated through some of these large compensation and some of these large damages, large cases and large settlements, we could change out a lot of prosecutors in a lot of areas. There has not been any real collaboration. And I think that, even some of the lawyers who are high power lawyers would say to themselves, what can I do? And I think that if they're thinking about purely capitalistic goals, then they're not going to be able to think about, some of the things that I just mentioned in terms of replacing people who are running politically.
Yes. I have comment from Kenneth Chamberlain Jr. He says, Jonathan Newton, thank you for standing on the front line when many are too afraid. Kenneth Chamberlain Jr. Now let's talk about, I always have conversations with the activist community, and you brought up even some of the victims that win some of these large judgments in controlling the political process in our neighborhoods. If we know that the commissioner of the police department is appointed by the mayor, and things are going wrong, and the commissioner doesn't go nowhere, then we need to gather and vote the mayor out. I mean,
that's right.
It's not rocket science.
That's right. That's right.
Where do you see, other than the victims, where do you see in the activist community? Because I don't even see them running candidates. I see them complaining about elected officials, but I don't see them taking part of the political process and pooling their resources and putting these candidates out there.
We have to sort of accept everybody where they come to this activism endeavor, where they're at. When I started, I'd be saying, why aren't people doing more? They're not backing these candidates, and so these are fresh ideas. A lot of people, when they talk about they're an activist now, or they've been doing activism in their communities, this is their first time at the rodeo show. First time off the bench, and so there are some good books. I happened to read some good books during law school about how we can do grassroots activism and actually change systems change. And one of the things that I learned is that when Dr. King and them did it, they did it strategically, they did it quietly, and they really did it with intention. And so during 2014 and 15 and 16. I'm not going to say that there was a lack of intention. I'm going to say that there wasn't as mature of an intention as to what we were doing, and so therefore, we got a lot of attention, but we didn't make a lot of progress. Now we have seen the progress come, 17, 18, and 19, and 20 in terms of we have Black prosecutors in areas where they were not, in St. Louis and other areas, in California and other areas. And so the seeds were laid in 2014, 15, and 16. How do I meet people right where they're at and try to take them to the next level, or take them to where they want to go. And so with the activist community, it really boils down to what is the training mechanisms inside the various organizations to understand, to train people to what change looks like, what can be done with this. And oftentimes, there is no training, there is sometimes no guidance. But I will say this, there has been, Lawyers for Black Lives really did a good job. There's some other organizations that did some good jobs training people, and it needs to go out into the community. One of the things that you'll see, once I became a lawyer, I found this out. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to keep up with the practice of law, which is litigating claims and defending people against claims that the state has brought, and being an activist at the same time. And so activists have a certain role, lawyers have a certain role, Community members have a certain role, and really, all of us understanding our role and understanding what each person does inside the system, inside this journey, would make it much more effective. And so
Mhm.
the training is something that needs to happen at a fundamental level to understand what can be done.
Good, good, good. Now let me activists. I'm going from your activist experience and your legal experience. What recently you've seen? Well, they reported black district attorneys, Marilyn Mosley, the sister out, especially the sister out in St. Louis, that has taken on a lawsuit, which is very unique, man.
Mhm.
I was impressed that she did that to sue the police department and the police union with the KKK Act.
Mhm.
What do you think about that? And are we seeing a turn that might establish case law in dealing with police departments in their race and in their embedded racism?
Absolutely. I believe her name is Gardner out in St. Louis. What she did was profound and necessary. Um, we have she went there into an area that was hostile, and she said that she was going to prosecute police officers when they did things that were violated the law, just as the prosecutor, the state's attorney up in Baltimore has done. And it almost immediately uh, there was kickback from the police union, the police department, and police officers on the streets. And so, with what she did in terms of launching an affirmative lawsuit against the people who are conspiring to stop her from exercising her duties and powers as a prosecutor is the right remedy. Um, you know, it hasn't been done before because we have a lot of it inside this business here. I'll tell you this. I mean, this is the go along, get along
Mm,
for a lot of folks. Just as long as nobody bothers me, I keep my head down until they come for me. And so you find a lot of that inside this. People are so scared because they got a license and they're worried about having their license pulled. The prosecutor there stood up. The prosecutor up in Baltimore stood up. We even have a local prosecutor here. Who's been standing up and actively prosecuting police officers for their misconduct, and so that change has happened, and it's going to continue to happen as long as we change the personnel and we keep
exactly.
personnel in there that's going to prosecute police officers when they have misconduct. Now on the private side of the bar. Um, Lawyers need to really start taking a look at suing police officers even when there's not huge damages, but civil rights have been violated. um, you know it, it sends a message that we're going to put these officers in a position where if they're going to violate people's civil rights, they're going to at least be called on the carpet for it. But with regards to that lawsuit and what she's doing, that is outstanding. It is necessary. It is needed. The kickback that she's been getting, and the kickback that even Marilyn Mosby got up in Baltimore, it's emblematic of what happened in 2014, 15, and 16 and 17. You have a country where we just simply said Black Lives Matter, and all of a sudden we were a terrorist group. You
Exactly.
know, you know, uh, we didn't say Black Lives Matter exclusively, Black Lives Matter only, Black Lives Matter more. We just simply said Black Lives Matter,
Right.
and it was inferred that we meant Black Lives Matter equally, and the whole damn country went berserk. I mean,
Exactly.
you even have black folks talking about, what are they trying to say? We're trying to simply say a message that hasn't been said throughout American history is that Black Lives Matter equally.
Exactly. Exactly. When we talk about police unions, um,
Mhm.
I'm the sister out there, Heather. Oh my God,
Where? In St. Louis?
in St. Louis with the ethical
Gardner.
police assignment. Yeah, the Ethical Police Society has stepped up in support of the district attorney.
Oh,
Um, and if she's watching, I apologize. A lot of things going through my head right now trying to get this question. Um, she has stepped up, and she their organization, the St. Louis Ethical Society.
hang on, I'll dig her up. Heather Taylor.
Yes, Heather Taylor. Sorry, Heather Taylor.
I could be the production producer in the background because doing these types of things, you realize this is not when you come on air. That's not just a single man operation. You got to have folks in the background. But I applaud you for doing it.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, I got you back.
Heather Taylor, hopefully I'm going to get her on the show also, and we're going to talk about what they're doing out there as a Black law enforcement organization. But they also and I got to find out where the lawsuit is at. Has sued the city also, in the fact that they felt that the FOP, the union, local union out there, police union, wasn't representing Black officers wasn't representing officers properly. So they actually launched a lawsuit. In your perspective of being on both sides, I understand the need for labor unions. I'm good with that. But I also know historically and since I've been in different national Black law enforcement organizations, that Black law enforcement officers have always got the short end of the stick, and even my personal experience with my wife and brother. And I want to thank you because a lot of people don't know, while you was going through law school, we was hitting up once a week, laying a defense every week on what we had to do with my wife, man.
hey, work it until it works, right?
Exactly. And I want people to know that, man, when my wife was going through what she was going through and being retaliated against, and didn't get any help from the union. Brother Jonathan was going through law school, and we was on the phone all the time talking about which strategies we could take to make sure my wife was not going to lose her job over this nonsense. And I thank you, brother, for being there, and for people that's watching this. This is one of the brothers that was in the background, letting me know what was, and Ken Williams too. When they were blowing my phone up with different ideas and strategies, and we was trying to do, but she still got a job, and praise God, man, and we're getting through that. But how can Black officers? I believe Black officers need to get a national legal defense fund, to address the situation. But even from your experience, what do you see in the need of Black officers having some type of different representation? Because we're getting the short end of the stick.
Well, addressing first, like the idea of unions, I support unions because collective bargaining works to be able to get employers to do the right things by employees. And then the next step is like inside the unions, are we getting equal representation when it comes to defending our rights as people of color? Are we, in your wife's situation, I was, what was being described to me was something that, she wasn't getting adequately represented by the counsel that was available to her through the union. And that's a common thing sometimes, we're not getting, we're members of these unions, we're paying dues, but we don't have, when we get adversely impacted by employers, we're not getting the type of representation that other people get. We get sort of like the secondhand representation. And so even here in Prince George's County, there are police officers right now who have come together, and they're police officers of color who have come together who are suing the police department. And it's Blacks and Hispanics that have gotten together, and they are suing the police department for discrimination. And so essentially what I'm, hoping for is that they're successful on their allegations and what they've made in their claims. With regards to some kind of national mechanism, it can be done. It can be done. Um, it would take a Herculean effort to get attorneys on board to understand what the laws are in every single state to be able to protect the rights of officers. But it could be done. A union of sorts could be formed. Um, you
Yeah.
know, I know I'm not the person to do it, but there, you know, I'm on a different mission. That's protecting police officers. This is where I kind of, you know, I'm no longer a police officer for a reason.
Hmm.
And I think that, when we look at maintaining some of these structures and systems that we're talking about, you know, uh, it takes the police to maintain them. And until we change some of the policies that are in place, like I believe in community policing,
Hmm.
but I don't believe in community policing from the government. I believe in people policing themselves. And I think that what we've done is we have abdicated some of our responsibility to police ourselves and giving it over to people who run around in costumes and call themselves, officers of the law, when in fact some of the very things that they're doing are criminal themselves. And
Right,
so,
right, right.
you know, I'm not to the point where I'm saying completely abolish the police, but I would radically like to change the way that the police are operating in America. And I mean, people will probably run out of here and quote me on that, but I'll say it again. I would like to radically change the way that police operate in America. Number one, starting with a standard use of deadly force regime all across the country that uh, places the value of human life over, in other words, there needs to be mandatory de-escalation inside before any use of force is ever sought. And so that's one of the things that you said we were going to talk about too. And I'm big on this because right now there's no uniform use of force. In fact, I think it was Amnesty International did a report in 2015, and it said that every state in the U.S. failed to comply with international standards on the use of legal force um, by police officers. Every state in this country fails to comply with the international standards of the use of lethal force in this country.
And I believe it.
Yeah, there are literally uh, 13 states in the U.S. right now as we sit that fall beneath the standard that the U.S. Constitution says should be allowed. So, and there are 9 states in this country that have no laws at all to deal with the use of lethal force. So I want to make sure everybody understood that. I go over it again.
I think you need to repeat that again, brother.
Yeah, yeah. There are 13 states in the United States who their legal standards, when it comes to the use of deadly force, fall beneath the constitutional standard,
Mm.
right? And there are 9 states that currently have no laws whatsoever on the books when it comes to dealing with use of deadly force. No laws on the books at all. They don't say anything about the use of deadly force.
I think the NAACP Legal Defense Fund need to give you a call, brother, because that's something that's new to me, and brother, I'm going to research that and look into that also, and question when I meet with these people from these organizations. How do how do we address that? Because that's very serious. And also, Ron Hampton used to always say that there's no national, um, like they have those what they call it, CALIA, the
Yeah,
national accreditation, but they don't even discuss
they're not mandatory.
exactly.
And
And they
so,
don't discuss use of force anyway.
yeah, they don't discuss use of force. They just discuss procedures. And so when you look at, and I want to come with the site with that, it was Amnesty International that did that report. It was in 2015. I believe the gentleman's name was Hawkins. Um, and that was the first report of its kind where they essentially looked at what are the use of force, use of lethal force guidelines throughout the United States, and there's an international standard, and they use that as sort of like the gold standard. And their standard internationally is to protect the sanctity of life. But what happened when they started looking at every state, they started seeing this, hodgepodge
Right.
of law. And here in Maryland, just to give folks a sort of framework of the law. I'm not going to discuss Maryland law, but I just want to. There's constitutional law, which I like to call framework and authority law. There's common law, which is judge-made law that comes up by custom and practice, and then there's customary law, which is I would call that the lowest form of law, which is just based on nothing but customs, right?
Right.
And
Right.
then there's statutory law, which is a legislative body made the law, they wrote it down, and then this is the law. And of those types that I just explained, statutory law is what every state needs to have put on books that says this is when we have the use of lethal force in America, this is how it is to be done. And right now, I think 9 states have, 13 of those states have common law setups. 9 of those states have no, they mention nothing about the use of lethal force. And common law, just so everybody understands, it really came from the English legal system that basically was judges that were put in place by kings. And so when we say we're still operating under a common law setup, I think that we're now to the point where we need stuff in writing, because we have statutory law for homicides in most states, and that's good because it puts everybody on notice as to exactly what's to be expected. Common law does that because common law also does that in certain areas because it's been around so long. We sort of know it. This is the common law definition of murder. This is the common law definition of robbery. This is the common law definition of theft. But there's nothing like actually putting it down and saying, this is what our legislator says that is the law in this land. And then we have the courts to be able to interpret what the legislative intent was.
Right. 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 Yeah. I think, see, this is why I think we need lawyers more like you on the national level, and the fact that the Black Lawyers Association and different lawyers groups need to tack this together. It has to be a united front, and I really think something like this needs to go before the Supreme Court and be argued in front of the Supreme Court because this is they are legally continued the mission of America when it's exception to kill Black and brown people, man. I mean, that's my opinion, and I'm going to stick to that because it is what we see.
Right.
It
Right.
is what we see. I am. I've been in 30 years in law enforcement, and a lot of my family members are in law enforcement, and we treat people fairly and just by the law and abide by the policies and procedures. Um, and those that are Black, white, or brown that violate those policies, procedures, and the trust of the people, and when you violate your own people, I think you should be held accountable. But we also understand that this is a system, right? It's
Yeah.
systematic, man, and we need to go like things like this. We need to go in front of the Supreme Court because we have to address it, and we need more Black law enforcement and Black people in criminal justice. Now,
I
you
agree.
see a lot in New York now. They're talking about the bail reform law,
Hmm.
and that I'm for it. Seeing young people held in jail for 6 months, seven
Hmm.
months for an iPhone, you know,
Right.
and they get in front of the judge after 6 months and they say, you
Time served. Go home.
right, if you plead
Right.
guilty, you go
Right.
home. And
Right.
brother do, yo, I'm out. Even,
Yeah.
a
6 months.
lot of drug cases where the drugs are planted on
Right.
them. And they let them sit. Um, talk
I
about that. Talk about talk about that from a legal perspective, a social perspective. And
So I have had a good friend of mine recently go through a situation where his house was vandalized by a family member, and he went and took charges on her, and she got out the same day and came back and vandalized the house some more. And bail reform right now is has been uh, cast into no cash bond and no cash bail systems versus cash bail systems, and uh, that that framework right there sets up this paradigm where I think it's like, we're going to go with no cash bail at all, or we're going to go with a system that is cash bail based, and we don't have a framework to be able to deal with people who don't have any money at all whatsoever to get out. And I think I found that the best solutions when we talk about reform are to not deal with polar opposites, with the ends of the spectrum, to try to come to something in the middle, because I do believe that there are situations where cash bail is necessary. I do believe there are situations where people need to be held without bond or with a cash bond that is necessary. On the other side of the equation, um, minor charges and charges that are frivolous, I don't think that somebody should be held, at all on a bond. I think that most of those should be personal people released on personal recognizance. But we've had this situation where we had a cash bail system that overly penalized people of color and poor people, and so the knee jerk reaction is we would like to have a no cash bail system. That's the reform. And so I think that some smart people need to get in the room and think about what can what can a system like that what needs to happen. I've got to run 1 second
okay,
and take care of something. I'll be right back because somebody's waiting up front for me, and I told them I we were supposed to start at 11. I'll be right back. Okay.
not,
Stay on.
not a problem, brother. Not a problem. While Jonathan is doing something real quick, brother Maury, thank you for your question. I mentioned the NAACP, well, specifically, but it's really a blanket statement to a lot of the national organizations that that I think, in a lot of situations, are not addressing the issues, or are not are really addressing the issues. As you said, not everybody supports the NAACP, but I still support the organization. I might disagree with some of the actions, but I still support the organization because the organization is needed. National Action Network, I might not agree with everything, but I do support the need of the organization, and even the National Urban League might not agree with everything that they do, but I do support the organization because there is a need for the organization. But I also believe that we need to address situations in the present day time. Sometimes with organizations that they don't change how they address. Remember, a lot of these organizations was created before social media, before this mass information dump in your mind. I mean, people can get information in a split second on their cell phone. So I mentioned organizations like that because they are the historical organizations, and they still need to be in the forefront. You know, they still need to be in the forefront, but sometimes there are politics in the organization that prevent them from being in the forefront. So I didn't just mean NAACP per se. I should say the historic civil rights organizations, those that you see all the time and hear all the time, because we couldn't get a lot of these or national. We could get the local sometimes, like with the Kenneth Chamberlain shooting. We could get the local to come out, but we couldn't get national support. We couldn't get support from the National Action Network. We met with Sharpton a couple of times and asked him to come up for the Kenneth Chamberlain shooting, and because of politics, it wouldn't happen. It didn't happen. And I still got mad love for Al Sharpton, but I get it. I get it, and we ended up doing our own thing. And look how God works. There's a award-winning movie that's sweeping all the different film festivals called "The Killing of Kenneth Chamberlain Jr." I mean Senior, and a true story. And I think sometimes you got to put things in God's hands and not people.
And let it roll.
Exactly.
Yeah, because we've made icons out of, and I got love for Sharpton for what he's been doing throughout the country, but we can't vest all of our attention and focus on individual men. We need to be empowering communities, and we need to be empowering individuals inside communities to become the next Sharpton, to become the next Jackson, to become the next King, and setting them on that mission. I don't want to be the next King or the next Sharpton or the next Jackson. I want to be the next Newton. And and I want to empower those who are around me, like doing the stuff like we're doing today. Having a conversation around criminal justice reform and around the things that are necessary to change the system. It starts locally and it ends locally. Nationally, for me, there are certain states I'm just like, okay, I'm going to give up on that one. You know what I'm saying? I'm not looking for no change out there. You know what I'm saying? I'm just, you're not going to find me in Utah. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, they can have that one,
Right.
They can have Oregon.
Exactly. Exactly. And I wanted to go back to something that you mentioned about the community taking control and how their community police. One of my mentors, Professor Jimmy Bell, who at one time he ran the criminal justice and the sociology department in Jackson State University. He was, and this is a little known fact, he was the originator of community policing before the institution hijacked it.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and
And change the narrative of it.
exactly, and that was the mindset from the beginning of the community. That's why they call it community policing, right? Of the community having
a community doing it themselves.
Exactly, exactly, and having control of policy, procedures, and hiring, and looking at law enforcement as just as a piece of the puzzle. No different than you look at economic development, job training, education. It should be a support system for all those different pillars of the community, and the community having input. The Black community is the only community that don't have input in how their police is community is.
Say that again slowly for the folk in the back.
Exactly, brother. And I say that all the time. And that was Professor Bell's, and he did it years ago. I have a video where we were at Jackson State, and a retired brother, retired sergeant from Dallas Police, he brought it up. Like when you're around brothers that been in the game so long, you learn stuff that you didn't even know. Like I didn't even know Professor Bell had started that he said the town in Florida, little town in Florida, and they were working on the whole aspect of it, and that commissioner or chief there ended up leaving, and the next thing is that the new chief came in, booped Professor Bell out, took it, and then became a national icon. Yeah.
That's generally how it works.
Exactly. And see,
about white.
Exactly. And then when you see community policing, and you see him having coffee with a cop, and they call it community, and different programs, which is good. I mean, which is good stuff. But the part of having having that input and relationship with the community is never there on policies and procedures
Right.
and personnel, right? So I think we have to, we have to change our mindset and get the Black community in there. And just like what you said, man, you said earlier, we gotta change. We gotta put people in
You gotta
all.
change personnel, man.
It,
You gotta change personnel, and I mean personnel that we hey man, all our skin folk ain't our kinfolk, okay?
brother.
And we put people in office expecting a return on our investment in terms of them as individuals, politicians, and when they, they're my old boss, that sheriff was a lunatic, but even a broken clock is right twice a day, and there was something that he always used to say. If you do business with a politician, you got to do it with a knife to their throat. you know, because basically politicians sometimes will not do the right thing for the right reasons. Otherwise, conditions would be changed in this country almost instantly. They do it for political reasons, which means most of the time it's what's politically expedient or what is going to allow them to stay in office. And so we have to, as community leaders, we need to be getting together and forming, groups, large groups of voters to say, hey, this is the knife we're putting to your throat. We got you here. We'll take you out of here, and we're just not there, in our communities. Our communities oftentimes are run by, people who are in the background with money, might be developers in one community. It might be real estate investors in another community. But it's essentially, we've not been able to express our power because a lot of people are fooled by the most active advertised campaigns as opposed to the ones that are really talking about policies that will impact our communities in a positive way, that don't necessarily get the airtime because they don't have the dollars to get the airtime and buy all the billboards and all the posters and all the things that are necessary to run an effective campaign. And so you're able to almost buy an election in some of our communities, and for literally the return on investment, when you get a council or you get a county commission or whatnot, the return on investment is immense for some of these business owners. And so what they do is they just say, look, I'll get you there, and it becomes a quid pro quo.
Exactly, and it's really destructive in the Black and the poor communities, because these communities, they have first of all, a lot of them don't have really understand the political process, and second, these poor Black communities, hardworking, middle class and lower middle class people, they don't even have the money to contribute, to campaigns, and I say it all the time. You want to see who runs the politician. I don't care what politician it is. Pull up their campaign finance.
That's right. That's who they answer to.
It's just not. It's not even a rocket science.
Yeah.
If you don't see Pookie, Ray Ray, Junebug, your grandmother,
right,
all those people from the street, if you don't see them donating 1,000, 2,500, under different names and different businesses and all how they do the tricks, then they not for Pookie and Ray Ray and Junebug and your grandmother. I mean, it's just that simple.
Right. And like you say, it's not rocket science. And so we have working class communities who don't have time. They're getting off work, and they of course we have after hours voting, we have Saturday voting, we have early voting, and we still have numbers that are on local politics that are down somewhat in some areas. And so we need to find ways, if we can pay taxes online and we can verify identities to look at your credit, we can verify your identity to determine whether you can vote. And we need to make that an online thing.
Exactly.
And we need to make voting easy. We need to make voting mandatory. Okay. And voting does need to exist for people who are incarcerated as well as those who are not incarcerated.
Exactly.
This requires people who are going to unabashedly claim these policies, run on these policies, and try to institute these policies. We don't have a lot of people to do that because sometimes we have people who just want to go along, get along. They're willing to accept status quo. So, but what else? I want to go back to use of force. And I want to talk about that for a minute because I think when people think about the Supreme Court giving us a solution, that'll be like This is what the Supreme Court says, and that's it. I'm gonna give you right now, and I'll ask you and most of the audience, name the case that decides what is excessive force in America. Most of us don't know the case. I'm not putting you on the spot.
Right.
Most of us don't know the case, but even so, inside the case, if you know the standard that is used to judge excessive force, after we judge excessive force by the standard that is there, we will still come up with this. Well, really, that could almost mean anything, right? So first, the case is Graham v. O'Connor, okay, and the standard that which we determine whether there is excessive force or not excessive force is objective reasonableness. Now,
right,
that means
it could
that means would an officer with the same training and experience, would he have done the same thing under those circumstances? Was it objectively reasonable? Right? Well, when you ask yourself that question, you have to ask yourself the next question, like, which type of officer are you talking about?
Exactly.
Because if you're talking about an officer who's from some of the communities that we're from, some of the stuff that some of these other people are doing is completely unreasonable.
Exactly.
And so the standard that is there is it's amorphous. Even though it sounds concrete, it's objectively reasonable. It's not there. And so I'm calling on state legislators like ours to start drafting up, use of force.
Somebody asked the question. What was the case again?
Graham v. O'Connor. Graham v. Connor.
Graham v. Connor.
Yeah. Let me look up the site. Hang on 1 second.
I'm gonna put it right in the
490 US 386. 1989 case. This dude had a diabetic. He ran into a store because he was having a diabetic episode. I think he paid for some orange juice, and he ran out the store in a rough. And cops pulled up on him thinking that he had robbed the store, and he was really going into his diabetic episode at that point. They pulled him out the car, beat him and handcuffed him, left him sitting there, and eventually they found out that he was having a diabetic episode. And the court said that it wasn't excessive force because it was objectively reasonable. Now I want to ask you, as a Black officer in Black communities, and you've seen people have diabetic episodes because a lot of us don't take the medications, and a lot of us run around here snatching up apple juice and orange juice and all kinds of other stuff. Besides taking the recommended prescribed drug, you have more training. It wouldn't be objectively reasonable for you to snatch somebody out the car and beat them when they're tripping out like that. But these other people who have not been around our communities would do that, and it's deemed objectively reasonable because we have this amorphous, law.
Exactly. Look, I make no bones about it. I'm in correction. We don't have a gun, taser. We have none of that. I mean, it's one officer with 60 or more inmates, and I see situations, and I'm like, yo, he shot him for that? Like
yeah, exactly.
Like, okay, well, he had a knife.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you have a stab vest. You have a bulletproof vest on. You have protection. You have long sleeves. If it's winter, you have long sleeves. I always wear long sleeves. Right. I always wear a sweater, even in the summertime. I would be seen with a sweater on because if I'm being cut, that's a layer of protection.
Right.
If he has a shank or something, because I'm going to take it from him. I'm not,
right.
Because at first I don't have a gun.
Right.
Right. So the mindset is different, and I've always said, police officers, before they're on the street, they should work in a jail for a year.
Right.
Because first,
it gives you a lot of patience.
Exactly. Yeah,
and I'll tell you, I remember when I started working in the jail where I was at, there was this one little dude. He was he must have been weighed about 115 pounds. And he had a housing unit to himself. And I was a public information officer. I was walking around with the sheriff. And this dude was in there. And I said, man, what is he supposed to do if things get out of control in there? He's supposed to hit the button and take that ass whipping until they get there. until help gets there. You know, obviously out in the streets, if somebody has a weapon and they, you know, they're pointing it at you. I was always trained with ability, opportunity, and jeopardy. If they have the ability to kill you, they're taking the opportunity, and you feel in jeopardy, then the shoot is quote unquote good.
Right.
I think that feeling in jeopardy is different for different folks, and a lot of people should not be in law enforcement because they get scared a little too quickly.
Well, not
And
only that, a lot of the white cops, to be honest, are scared of black people right off the bat.
Yeah, and you got some black folks who's scared of black folks too now. You know, I mean, I've seen some of them. I'm like, where are you from again? You know, and I'm not, you know, I'm from Key West, so you know they don't make the most blackest person out in Key West either. But you know, we need to be exposed to communities of color, and we need to be exposed to the types of environments that we're going to police in if we're going to be effective at policing in there. And we're going to have this. You have to have the social ability inside that community. Whereas suppose, you know, it's not, some people say, oh, that's so unprofessional to say, hey, my man, can I talk to you for a second? No, that man is going to respect you because you're able to talk on his level in the language that he likes to use, as opposed to trying to, may I talk to you for a minute? You know, it comes across as authoritarian. So these are all training skills that are necessary to police in certain communities. And some people would say by me even saying that I'm being racist. You know,
no,
I'm like, I don't consider it being racist to reach out to a community and meet them right where they're at.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, I mean, you know, we as law enforcement officers, we're being paid by the community. We make good money from the community's tax dollars. We get benefits from the community's tax dollars. We should not think that it's not our responsibility to reach out to the community that pay our bills. For some reason, we think that the culture itself, that we are outside of the workers that work for the municipality, you know, and I never understood that. Brenda Williams is watching, retired correction officer. She brought me back. She said, IPC skills, first line.
Interpersonal communication skills.
Exactly.
Absolutely right.
You can tell she old school because they don't say that no more.
She got the acronyms in there, the abbreviations and everything, you know.
Yeah.
But they don't, you know, a lot of and get this now, as we continue to move forward in the internet technology, the Twitter age and everything, interpersonal communication skills are diminishing by generation.
Exactly.
You've got brothers who don't even know how to talk to a girl without tweeting to them. You know, I was watching my son and he was, you know, he was just saying, what's up? You know, I was like, man, why don't you call her on the phone and let her hear your voice, man? You'll stand a better chance than just texting her, what's up? You know, but that's how they do it now. Exactly. And so when you take that reality and now you put them in positions of power, if they don't get the response immediately they're looking for out of whoever they're trying to communicate with, the next thing they're going is hands on and then guns on and batons on and pepper spray and taser and all this and that and the other. So we're going to see more of this if we don't start developing the interpersonal skills of humanity, let alone the police officers.
Exactly. We were meeting with political candidate, and you know, and I told her, I said, you know, the National Black Police Association, 1974, started. What do you do when you stop by police? And you know, I told her, I said, well, we changed it up, blacks in law enforcement. We said, how do you survive police confrontation?
Man, that's a seminar that's coming up February the 20th in one of these churches that I'm going to be presenting on here in this area. That's where we're at. Yeah,
exactly. And I told her, I said, we have to teach people, how do you survive? And I use, you know, and I tell people, I really understood where Sandra Bland was coming from. I felt her anger, you know, and I know people want to fight for their rights when they're right. I get that, but
that's not the place.
But just put the cigarette out. When I watched the video, and some people,
man, they gonna Twitter, they gonna cancel you.
Exactly. But guess what? I don't care, because
I know what you're saying, brother. I know what you're saying. It's the reality is
Just
that power dynamic until we change that. Yeah,
exactly. Get
yeah,
out of there. The man.
yeah. Get out of there. Escape. When you don't have the top, when you don't have the top side of the mountain, you need to learn. You need to start looking around for some escape routes.
It,
How do I get out of this situation? And so
exactly.
when I've done these presentations before, and I always, why should I have to take that? I'm not saying take it. I'm saying don't deal with it right there. You know.
Exactly. Because my whole thing is we are, as we know, as Black people, as we know, as humans, there are people that shouldn't have that badge, right?
That's right.
There are people and you don't know the mindset and condition of that officer that has the power to take your life.
Right.
Get up out of there.
Right. You're dealing with somebody who can be judge, jury, and executioner all within inside of a few seconds.
Exactly.
And so, at this point, this is not the place to get into a legal confrontation with them. This is not the place to, if you violate, if you have a camera recording, don't tell them I'm recording you. Just record.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Don't start hooping and hollering, because if you are recording, you want to look like the person who's got calm, good sense in front of the jury when you sue if your rights become violated, right? These are the things that we need to be training people to do. We can catch a whole lot more of these bad cops if we had some training.
Exactly. If the people, right, the
people had training,
we could get
right?
them all. We could get them all, and I use that, and people might go off, but and I watched the video again and again. I said the only thing the sister had to do, just put out the cigarette, get the ticket, drive off, call her lawyer, make a complaint, do whatever, and I believe she would have been alive today.
That's right. The other thing is that people don't understand. Even we start thinking, well, what's my one complaint going to do? This is why I started the National Association Against Police Brutality. We've sort of diminished in our abilities at this moment, but we're coming back. We need to be reporting to an outside agency that collects the data, so that then we can find out where there are patterns out of a particular officer. Daniel Holtzclaw, who was raping women out in Oklahoma, could have never existed had there been somebody to some organization that everybody knew. This is where you report this at. Here's the website you go to. This particular officer, tell us about your experience, and then we can report it. When you're reporting it to these individual law enforcement agencies, it's not that I don't trust them. It's that I don't trust them. Effective in their investigations.
Exactly.
So what needs to happen is an outside agency or an outside non-governmental organization needs to take this upon themselves to become sort of like the wheelhouse for taking in complaints. I thought the ACLU was going to do it. They had a piece of software that they had developed. We had developed a piece of software when I was in school. But then I found out it's phone app. If you don't go with the phone app, I was way behind the scenes. I was way behind the times. But we should look at that again. The way that you get these officers off the streets is you report your experiences.
Yes.
You report your experiences, and cumulatively, we can then begin to deal with these officers.
Exactly.
But if you go one-on-one, and you're gonna force, you may end up in a physical confrontation, and he's got his Batman belt on with his taser, with his pepper spray, with his baton, and ultimately his gun. And it just doesn't look. And the people that he calls, whatever's happening, for the most part, they're not going to say, "Oh, what are you doing? What is this officer doing that's bad?" They're going to be looking at you and snatching you up out the car with him.
Because they know they're going to end up like Carol Horn.
That's right. That's right.
If they stop them from doing, and I also think when we go back to politicians, they have to, in their collective bargaining agreements, put accountability measures in the contract.
That's right.
Along that matches the policies of accountability of use of force. It has to be also contractual. Law enforcement, if they go a few years without a raise, they will sell their firstborn to get a contract. You understand what I'm saying? So these politicians should understand the power of collective bargaining and the collective bargaining agreement to put accountability measures on use of force and code of conduct.
The other solution that I like. I think that officers should be carrying professional liability insurance. They want to be treated as professionals. Everybody says that, and so professionals have malpractice insurance, and it causes you to say, you know what, I'm not going to do that dumb thing because I don't want my rates to go up on my insurance, and I don't want to become uninsurable. I'm going to try to do this the right way.
Exactly.
Right now, there is absolutely no incentive, and I do think if we talk about changing I do believe there needs to be penalties, criminally and penalties administratively, right? But I also think that we need to incentivize officers to do the right thing. And
No, I
and
mean,
people
I,
people say, well, what about they get paid a salary? I said, yes, that's good, but we need to change this dynamic of officers are good officers because they made collars, or they're good officers because they solved crimes. We need to change this. We need to talk about community interactions. We need to talk about, what are the types of things that you're doing to prevent crime in communities, and award that accordingly.
no, well, no, and you're absolutely right because the reality is, if you read any, even the white law enforcement books,
Mhm.
I mean, police are called after the crime.
That's right. That's right.
they're not they're not called before the crime.
That's right.
They're called after the crime. So
Yeah,
right.
investigate and find the perpetrator.
Exactly. So, I mean, it should be more incentives on how they make on how they make the community safe. And I think Robert, one of the Pelian principles was you judge a police on how safe the community is,
Hmm.
not how many people that they arrest.
Right.
So I think
Right, because if a community is judged based on how many people get arrested, that means that the community is kind of failing to produce citizens that are law-abiding citizens.
exactly.
I mean, so we're judging agencies on, you know, how many arrests are made, how many tickets are written, how many murders are solved. I agree with solving the murders. Don't get me wrong, and I agree with there needs to be tickets written to keep people from just running wide open on the highway and killing people. But we've created this thing in America where we only penalize, we do not incentivize for good behavior. We don't reward people for goodness anymore. You
Right.
know, but I tell you who has picked up onto some of this. The insurance companies said, you know what, if you go a while and you don't have a traffic citation or an accident, we're going to reward you by giving you a discount.
Right. Right.
We've been ripping you off all these years, but we're going to give you a discount now because you've been a good boy. And then it causes people to start saying, I want that discount, and they drive accordingly.
Exactly. No, and if you do that, if you make law enforcement officers cover insurance, because look, I've seen officers that have cost the city millions of dollars and still working.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Who does that in the business?
yeah, right, and they're not touched. Their pension is not touched, and
They got no skin in the game.
exactly.
Now, people, the counter argument will be, well, we got all our skin in the game. We got our lives out here on the lines. And I want to ask this question seriously. You've been in law enforcement, and I've been in law enforcement. How dangerous is law enforcement for real?
Yo, you get paid for what might happen.
That's right. And so there was this back in 14, 15. I remember there was an article that was put out. It's more dangerous to be an Alaskan snow crab fisherman than it is to be a police officer. And when we go to now, the U.S. government does not track killings from police on citizens, but there is the Officer Down Memorial page that tracks every single officer officer who's killed in America. And we find almost historically that the numbers break out. About 150 officers lose their lives in the line of duty in America on average every year.
Mhm.
Hang on one second. Let me look and see what it's been. What 2019 brought us with regards to that. They had stopped. When I say they tracked this. Last year, line of duty deaths. How many do you think for last year?
Yeah, I think they were going down. So
They were going down. Last year, 134 people lost their lives in law enforcement. Now, out of 900,000 people, with the amount of interactions that they have, that is an astoundingly low number when you consider the argument that they say policing is so dangerous.
Mm.
You know, policing is so dangerous. Let me run the percentage of what that is. If you
I
just
mean,
have nine
and,
hundred thousand,
and I tell everybody we get paid for what might happen, and we put our lives on the line, of course. I mean, that's it. But when you compare it to the narrative that's given,
man, come on, man.
when you
They built this. They've built this idea that it is one of the most dangerous jobs in America. Now, I get it. There are times when that job can be dangerous, depending. You're out, you're running up on a car, you don't know who the people are in the car, but you can call for backup. You know, you're rocking up to a house to deal with the domestic violent situations and tempers are heated. You know, that's dangerous. That's dangerous. And there are every single day occurrences of these types of interactions, where you've got to do a traffic pullover. But we could do that even smarter now than we could in the past.
absolutely, and a lot
Th-
of the incidents of the question
Mhm.
police shootings, they find that the officer put himself in the position,
That's exactly right. That's exactly
himself
right.
in the situation where he had to use
That's right.
deadly force. You
That's right.
and because I look at some of these, and the first thing I ask, so when you're getting your yearly training in Article 35 deadly force and yada yada yada, what's the first thing they tell you to do? Cover and concealment.
That's right.
You know,
No, no, no.
running,
And
why
these
are you
folks,
running
man,
out there like a cowboy? Where's
some of these boys are, man, they running and gunning. They want to make a movie.
your exact?
Yeah. And so, when you look at that, right, you start asking yourself, what is the, what are our policies to get rid of officers who operate in this way? And we really don't have them.
No,
you know we're like, oh, he's a little aggressive. No, he's outright dangerous to himself, he's a danger to his other officers, and he's a danger to the community. And we don't have any real mechanisms to get rid of these people. And I think, the one bad apple mantra, that's all, it's just a bad apple. And I think it was Chris Rock that said this. He says, man, could you imagine if the airlines had adopted the same thing? Oh, he's just our one bad pilot. He crashed the whole plane. Nobody would be flying today. Or if you went into an arena with 100,000 people and they just called out on the speaker, listen, we've just got one terrorist in here with the bomb that's going to blow the whole place up. Everybody would get out. We wouldn't be, but we're okay with accepting um, rogue officers inside of police work, and we're okay with that because, you know, largely, uh, it affects communities that people don't see as equal.
right.
I said largely. I said largely. I didn't say, because I do want to make this clear. Um, when black and white folks get together on this particular issue, we'll begin to see change. Um, there have been a lot of efforts over the last years to bring together various communities and various ethnicities uh, together around police misconduct. And as long as we're divided on this issue racially, religiously, um, uh, sexually, we're not going to attack this, because this is something that, to be honest with you, the police don't really, they do care what color you are, because to a certain degree, but at the end of the day, the only color they care about is you're not blue.
Right.
And so they will hurt you if you're not blue. And so we need to really start looking at ways that we can reach out to other communities and say, hey, this is our suffering. uh, I'm not begging you to acknowledge it, but I see also that some of this has actually worked its way into your community as well. And then we'll begin to make some progress on it.
Exactly. Exactly. I think um, we have to foster the communication. I just want to read some comments.
Sure.
Welcome Judge Adrian Armstrong, Nathaniel Middleton, Darren Murad, Brenda Williams watching, Brian Savage, Al Malik Bin Bay, Cookie Alexander Campbell. Let me see. Brian Savage says we also need to share and educate folks on what's available to them. to protect and empower themselves, having direct access to knowledge of their rights.
Amen.
A.J. Woodson, he says it's more dangerous for being a black man to be pulled over by police in America. And then K.P. Patterson said, sad facts.
Mm-hmm.
Facts. Before I let you go, brother, we've been doing, we've been having a great conversation, man.
What time is it? Wow.
Yeah, right. It goes quick. That's what I said, man. It goes quick.
I enjoyed this though, Damon. I did.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, and we will do it again very soon, man. We'll come around, and because there's always new things to talk about. It's always new issues and new cases that the fight's going to continue, man. The fight's going to continue. But I want to close, brother. I know you posted. I'm not sure if your book is published yet. I know you posted the cover. Tell people about the book, if it's published, where
Mm-hmm.
you get it, and what's it about, and what drove you to write a book.
So the book is about being a law school student and the experience of being a law school student and how to be better. There's 100 rules of law school. It's called The Law of Law School. It's published by New York University Press. Um, a law school professor at my school saw me and some of the things that I was doing while I was going through law school. We had some conversations, and when I write this, my last year in law school, I started writing down. We started talking about writing down the rules that I was talking about and some rules that he had as well. And we said that we were going to make a little small book and see if we could get this thing published by. At the time, we were just looking to have it published for our school and have something to offer students who non-traditional students. When you go to law school, and I experienced this, and I was a grown man, so I know what it's like for a 25-year-old to go to law school. It's probably even worse. It was an intimidating process, and I went to a social justice law school, and so you question whether you can perform at those levels. If you've never performed at those levels, you question yourself on can you be effective as a lawyer and so forth. And so this book, it's two-part. It's to give people sort of a skill set to be able to navigate through law school. At the same time, it's an encouragement piece to say that if I could do it, you could do it. And I came from really difficult background. In the book, I explained, I was raised in my grandmother's house with a grandfather who was, God rest his soul, he was like a lot of, he was an alcoholic. I was raised in my grandmother's house. We had my uncle, he's a schizophrenic. He was military retired, and he was a military disabled vet. And I grew up in the 80s, and so during the heyday of the crack epidemic, and so I ended up graduating from high school at 20, and I dropped out at 18. No, I dropped out at 17, got back in at right at 19 and graduated when I was 20. And I went to 3 different high schools throughout I went to high school in Hinesville, Georgia, Florida, and then I went to high school I ended up graduating in Evans, Georgia. And this is because, my father was incarcerated. We were very transient folks, and we lived in my grandmother's house eventually the majority of the time. But so the book became sort of like, hey, if I could do this, so could you. And it's trying to really tap into the inner intelligence that we have, and we have it, and we have it in great quantity. That's part of it. The other part of it is really showing people the reason why we call it the law of law school, because one of the things that the professor brought out was there's an unwritten rule in law. There's unwritten rules in law school, and so if you've not been exposed to how law school operates because your family member went, this is a good book for you. So we put the rules together. And, I had never written a book. Andrew Ferguson had written another book, and he said, let's see if anybody has an interest. And so we put together the proposal, and some people said they were interested in publishing it, that everybody liked it. I was kind of shocked because, I'd never written anything other than the stuff that you see I put on Facebook. And, and every time somebody clicks like on stuff that I put on Facebook, I'm like, wow, I guess they agree with that. And then, of course, there are people that don't agree with some of the stuff I say. But the book got published, and I really I'm thankful to God because for me, you know, only God could have got me here. You know, I mean, I did. It did take some effort. It took some discipline, but man, you know, only God could have brought me from where I came. You know,
Exactly,
and that's it.
God
So,
be the glory, man. I mean,
amen.
God has been behind everything that we do, man. So, and that's why we're successful in our own levels because of the fact that what we do is ordained, man. And
Man,
you know,
that's
brother.
nobody can argue with that. You know, I mean, if you know, if you look at where we came from, Damon, you know, and I don't know much of your story, but you know, to do the things that we're doing now, and to be able to assist our communities, to empower our communities, to educate our communities, and to inspire our communities, that in and of itself is a success to me.
Exactly.
And I'm thankful to be a part of this show. I'm thankful that you know saw fit to have me, and I'm looking forward to doing more. And I wish you continued success in your journey with interviewing people. Bring Ken Williams on, man.
Yeah, oh man, yeah, I already hit him, man. You know, I already hit him. You know, I hit all the, you know, all the. A lot of the older brothers, they don't do the Facebook thing. They're like, "What?
Right.
Man, I'm not doing that Facebook. Are you crazy?"
I was a little gun shy with it too, man. I'm looking at myself, looking at all these gray hairs, make me want to cut my hair off and everything. But you know,
You know, but I'm trying to get as many people that I can that I know that's out there in the activist community. My man Darren Green popped in. I'm going to get his behind on here too.
uh-huh.
That was my partner out in Long Island, man, and you know, and sometimes we have to take care of home and take care. You know, we can't run the streets and be at every press conference and meeting. You know, but he's been out there too. So I'm going to get a many brothers and sisters as I can. Trying to, I got to reach out to my sister Heather out in St. Louis, man, and
Mm-hmm.
get her on because I applaud her for standing for that attorney and talk about what she's been doing out there and trying to get equal representation for Black officers against
Mm-hmm.
FOP. You know. And yes, I want to thank everybody for watching and everybody that thought this was a great conversation. It wasn't an interview; it was a great conversation, man, and between two Black men that are in the criminal justice profession and talking about how this stuff relates. That's what it's all about. We want people to see that there are Black people out there fighting, even though that you know the major news outlets don't put us out there, man. And,
Hey, no, we ain't on there. Ain't on,
nah, man, you know, nah. The close,
they ain't letting us get on there because you know they're gonna have to bleep out some things. They're gonna have to have us on time lag. You know what I'm saying?
exactly, man.
So they can edit some stuff.
Exactly. The closest I got was to Al Jazeera, man, and
Oh, really?
yeah, and that was you know, and they was calling me regularly, man, but that was on the end when all that stuff was going on, and that Al Jazeera America was folded. But you know, I had a great opportunity, and it was good to talk about it, man. And the post that they interviewed me about when about Giuliani, and I lit into Giuliani's behind, man. You know, I said, wow, I got opportunity, you know, on world TV to get in Giuliani's behind. Got in his behind, man.
You take them shots.
Got shot and gave him 2 shots at him, man. That was around with all the protests down around Michael Brown and in Ferguson. So you know, but after that, you know, it's a wrap. And you know, they don't want to interview us. You know, they don't want to interview Black law enforcement on these issues. You know.
Yeah, because you guys give a perspective. You know, there's people that are saying the things that how it really is on the inside, and it's damning to the system. But you know, man, I'm looking forward to doing my part to bring justice. And soon, I'm getting ready to launch a website called WeSueBadCops.com.
Yeah, all right. Listen, man, don't talk no more. When you want it, you got to come on. And
tell them about that. Tell you, we sue bad cops. You just gonna click on what state you in, and you know we're gonna put some paperwork on.
Yeah, that's gonna be great, brother. That's gonna be
yeah.
We definitely, man. we definitely gonna support that and have the link on all the websites we have. We're gonna have a link, a link on it. So people go on Black Westchester. They what? Oh, I need a copy. Oh yeah, boop, and do
We'll at least screen your case for you,
it.
and then we need to talk about me. You need to get together with some other heads in the room and talk about a legal defense fund for you know
Yeah,
law enforcement,
yes,
black law enforcement
yeah,
to be, who are going to be whistleblowers, and also a legal defense, an offense fund to fund some of the lower threshold cases
yeah.
for clients who don't have as much damages, but it still should be something that should be brought.
Yes, let's talk about it, man. Because I think if we had something like that, uh, um, a lot of black, dude, I get calls, man, from black cops
Yeah,
all over the country, uh,
yeah,
that need representation because their union is not representing them, and they bogus charges, retaliation, and I tell people the mission statement of the union, and this is not anti-union talk, but this is just reality when it comes to black law enforcement. The mission statement does not cover racism, bigotry, retaliation, right?
mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
they're your collective bargaining unit, meaning they vote on your raise. They didn't negotiate your raise.
That's all they're doing.
Exactly. But when it comes to what we go through,
Yeah.
they
So you need some supplemental insurance, stuff that the regular insurance, because the unions are basically like insurance policies. You buy into this thing, you pay a monthly little fee, and when stuff goes snap, crackle, pop, you call them up, and hopefully they'll sue on your behalf or they negotiate on your behalf. You need some stuff that they don't cover.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And brother, we're going to talk about that because I've talked to um, um, Sonia Pruitt, the
Hmm.
president of the National Black Police Association, and she agrees.
Hmm.
Terry McGee from the National Association of Blacks in Criminal Justice. So we want to talk about how do we put that together and give. I mean, look, we make good money as law enforcement. It doesn't take it doesn't take a rocket science. If you could pay to your union dues 30, 40, 50, 60, and they don't do nothing for you but let you get fired, you could give $50 a month for a national for a national pool to help people out when you get in trouble. Not for no BS neither. Don't call
Right.
it no BS, but
Right.
the real deal we know that the union is not, because some things you can still get the union if you push them, but
Right.
a lot of we know that they're not going to do it. So we need to establish something like that, and I think that's something that needs to happen.
Let's explore that, man.
Yeah, definitely, brother. Definitely, definitely. So I want to thank you, man. I want to thank you for giving me your time, man. My wife done called, so I know,
Always a pleasure.
and we'll be
Kenneth Chamberlain, it's a pleasure hearing from him too.
yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, 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 man. And
Looking forward to seeing that movie on DVD,
exactly.
in the house, all everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, God willing, man. I mean, they're going through the film festivals, man. Kenny had shown me the schedule of all the
Hmm.
different other film festivals. So I hope I pray to God that a distributor would pick it up, man, and put it in the theaters, man. I hope that it happens because
Yeah,
to know what happened to this man,
yeah.
they treated him, man.
Tragic
And
story.
it is sad that it didn't go national like it should have. It
Yeah,
went national, but I think it happened around the same time with Trayvon Martin, so
right,
they didn't, even with
right.
audio, I mean they did, CNN talked about it a little bit, but it didn't go as hard as I thought.
It's a highly selective process in terms of what they like to see on the national media. Uh, we'll talk about that at another time, but they're very selective,
Yes,
and they're very intentional.
yes, yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
but Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. was just as much of a victim as Tamir Rice, as Philando Castile, as Sandra Bland, as I could just list off a bunch of them, but just as much of a victim. And the media plays this game because they don't want everybody all at one time to say, "What the hell is going on here?"
Exactly, exactly,
But what happened to him was the exact same thing that happened to so many other people.
exactly,
You know,
brother. Exactly.
yeah.
Thank you again, man, and
Okay.
And have a blessed weekend, brother. And we'll talk
All right.
soon, man.
All right. One love. All right.
Okay.